Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. One of the number one questions I get asked regarding Power BI is, where did I learn it? Did I follow a tutorial or do a specific training, or how did I get to where I am? And the honest answer is, I just played with the tool myself. And so I played with Power BI, searched on Google, talked to other people who use it, and that's how I learned what I know today. And unfortunately, people don't really like that answer because that means they're kind of out of luck in learning how to use the tool, and so how to find something on their own. And so I decided to, instead of always giving that same answer of I learned it on my own, I would make a quick tutorial on building a dashboard and to help solidify some basic fundamentals with people. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to look specifically at building a dashboard relating to COVID. So there's some information publicly available regarding statistics for COVID, and that's what we're going to use to build a dashboard. And so what we're going to walk through is how to build filters. So the focus is going to be trying to compare different countries or continents. So we really want to understand, how does one country compare to another? Are high population areas resulting in lots of cases and deaths and testing? Or is it low populations that have an issue? Can we compare them, understand if there's something unique about a certain area? So that's going to be the goal of this. So you're going to be able to do filters there, filters on dates if you want to tighten up or enlarge the date range for tests, cases, or deaths. We're going to show you how to build a table with different information, including a URL that you can click and it'll bring you to that website. We're going to show maps, so specifically what countries or continents have these different cases and how many. We can split that information to go deeper into the specific countries. I'm also going to show you how to do a fancy tooltip. So here's the kind of standard tooltip that defaults in Power BI. I'm going to show you how to build something like this where you can have additional table views when you hover over something to give additional insight. Okay, so just by getting the foundation here, you'll be set for pretty much any dashboard you try to create in the future. And let's just jump right in. So the first thing we're going to do is click File and New. If you're opening Power BI for the first time, you probably already had a blank sheet, so that's fine. And the first thing you want to do is bring in your data. The whole point of Power BI is to link multiple data sets together to generate new insight. And so what we're going to do is pull in our data. And how I always think about this is there's always going to be a table that is going to be like my master, I call it the mother table, where I'm going to link all my data sets to it. Okay. And so for us, I want to compare different locations. So I'm going to want a country table where each row is a unique value. And then I'm going to pull information in there like cases, deaths, vaccinations used by that country into that table. Okay. And that's how we benefit from using a tool like Power BI. And so first thing I need is a table that has these unique countries. And unfortunately, the COVID data that I'm pulling didn't have that data readily available. So I'm going to teach you guys how to take a table that exists and modify it for our purpose. So again, our first goal here is let's get a table with unique countries and that country's population, because we're going to be comparing population sizes. Okay. So we're going to click on Get Data. And for me, all these files are saved locally. I'm going to put a description where I got it. I'm going to put the link in the description where I got the information. So don't hesitate to pull it and do this training along with me to help maximize the knowledge you get from this. Okay. But I mean, if you have other locations, web, you have SQL Server, you can do other locations. But for us, we're going to be Excel workbook locally on the computer. And the first one I'm going to take is this OID COVID data country stats. I'm going to click that and click open. And then what this is going to do is bring up a navigator. And navigator just means once it opens up the Excel sheet, what tabs exist in that Excel sheet and which tab do you want to pull from. So this one is only one tab. So we're going to click on that and we're going to click on load. And that's going to bring it into our Power BI dashboard. Okay, so that's loaded in. However, this table, if we click on, let's say this button here, the data table, has lots of data and definitely does not have unique country names. As you see, there's duplicates. So we're going to modify this table to get unique countries and just the population. The population is a column further on the right. Okay, so we're going to right click this and click Edit Query. And now this is how we manipulate the data that we're going to pull into our dashboard. And so we have ISO code, which is good. That's going to be unique by the country. We have continent, which can be useful for our filtering later. And we're going to have location, which is the country, which we want unique values of. And then we have a bunch of other columns that we're not going to need right now. We're going to come back to this later, but we're going to remove these for now. So I'm going to click on this column that I don't need. I'm going to hold the shift key and I'm going to press the right arrow key to select other columns. Sorry, it let go on me. So I'm going to keep going until I reach the population column. There it is. And now I'm going to right click those columns and I'm going to hit remove. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same thing. So click on the column I don't need anymore on the right side. Click and hold the shift key and then press the right arrow key. We're going to select all of these columns and we're going to remove those as well. So now we have our country information and the population. But like I said, we need unique values here. Okay, we want one row to be one country name, not have multiple. And so we got to remove the duplicates. So how we're going to do that is right click location and we're going to click remove duplicates. Okay. That's going to load. And then you see here now we have our countries, their unique values with their population. This is great. We're almost there. One last thing is that in this data set, they also put an additional row for not necessarily a country, but just the continent. Okay, so let's say Africa, Asia, and so forth. We want to get rid of those because we can just sum the countries to get the total population of the continent. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the drop down on continent. We're going to uncheck null, which is going to deselect it, and it's going to modify the query to remove that data. Okay, so now we have our unique rows for continents, or so countries, sorry. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the name of this table to country data. I'm going to hit enter. And that's our country table. So we're set. So from there, we go to the top left and click close and apply. And now what this does is it does modifications to the file coming into our Power BI table. It does not modify the table itself that you pulled from. So the Excel sheet on my computer has not been modified. It's just pulling that Excel sheet, doing modifications in space, and then entering Power BI modified. So you don't have to worry about anything changing on your local file. Okay. Now we're going to continue to bring in the other data sets. Okay. So I'm going to do Excel workbook. This is COVID testing. These are the tests that are being done by country on a daily basis. Again, we have our navigator. We're going to check the tab that we're leveraging, and we're going to click load. Okay, and what you're going to see is that it says there's errors. Okay, 2 errors in this table. Typically, that means there's a problem with maybe 1 cell or 2 cells in this case of data. So we'll click view errors just to see what's going on. And when we look at the table, here's our 2 rows in the table that have the error. We're going to scroll to the right, and it's in the short-term positive rate. This is not a column we're going to be using for this dashboard, so I'm not super worried about it. If you do have some worries, you can go investigate the source data, understand what that is, but I suspect it's probably just an error in the source data, maybe a typo or something. So I'm going to remove this. I'm just going to hit the X and click not now. And I'm going to hit discard changes and discard. Okay. So those errors are not something we need to be concerned about. We're going to keep going. I'm going to click get more data. We're going to get the vaccinations allowed by country. Okay. Again, we're going to click that one tab that's in there. We're going to load it in. I'm going to get the vaccines by manufacturer. So this is just going to be tracking, how many Moderna vaccines or Pfizer or whoever is winning the race, the COVID race. So we're going to load those in. And the last dashboard I'm going to pull in from here is calendar. And this is just to help us have like a source for filtering on dates. Depending on the different data sources we could have a mix of different date ranges. And so what I like to bring in is a calendar just has a bunch of different dates that helps with filtering. And you'll see in a little bit what I mean. Beyond that, I want to do a little training with you guys on how to manipulate some data sets some more. So I added in some extra rows here. So when you look at the sample data it shares with us, we want the date to be the header. But right now I have extra added rows for teaching, and then I have another row called purposes. So we need to get rid of those and get date as the header. So we're going to load this data in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the calendar, click edit query. And we need to remove these top two rows, like I said. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to the top here, remove rows, remove top rows, and we're going to punch in number 1. So that's reflecting this first row. And if it was 2 rows, we'd put 2 and it would delete these 2, but we need to keep data in there. So we're going to get rid of just the 1. Okay. And we're going to click OK. And then we need the date up here. So there was this nifty little button here, use first row as headers. We're going to click that. And then we're going to close and apply. And we've got our proper date column set up and a calendar set up. Before jumping into making connections and building our visuals, I want to do one last thing. So in the country data data set that we pulled in, there are a lot of columns in there before which we removed because I wanted to have unique countries. However, in that data set, there was some useful information for us. It had the new cases every day by country and the deaths every day by country. And so I want to bring that back in, but I want to keep it as a separate table. And so what we can do is we can take country data, we can right click it on the left here and click duplicate. What that's going to do is just make an exact copy of the table that we brought in with all the modifications we did. However, we don't want those modifications anymore. We want to get the new cases and new deaths data that was in there. So what I'm going to do is on the right, there's the applied steps. The applied steps is every modification we did to the data source. And so I want to start removing these. So all you have to do is click on the little X next to each. So you see it goes back a step where we have the nulls back in. And I'm going to remove the duplicates. You see the duplicates, all the Afghanistans come back. And now finally, I want the columns back in. Okay. So now all of my columns are back in. And this is just to get the new cases and new deaths. And we're going to link back to our country table later. So what we're going to do here is rename this file case COVID cases and deaths. Okay. Press enter to rename that. And then close and apply. So the good news is we've officially brought in all of the data sets that we need to build our dashboard. Now, before we jump in and start making our visuals, we're going to do Power BI's bread and butter, which is connecting the data sets together. And typically Power BI does a pretty good job of making connections where it feels they should occur. But we're going to remove all those and just do our own. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to click this model button here, or just the relationships. And what I'm going to do in the bottom right here is just zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to right click each of these lines and delete. So we're just going to put our own lines, make sure we understand what's connecting with what, and we'll set everything up. Okay, so just go one by one, get rid of these. And I'll show you how I like to position things just to help make it clearer for my brain. I could be unique and crazy, so really don't follow me on this. You can do whatever works for your brain. I'm just very straight when it comes to this stuff. So what I like to do is put any of the data sets that I'm pulling information from, I try to put next to each other. And then everything else that I'm that are like the parent files, I put on the top or on the bottom. So for COVID testing, we have an ISO code, which is a unique code by country. Okay, so I can take ISO code and just drop it on ISO code of country data, and now it's linked. So now I can pull this information into this table. That's the way to think about it. Okay. Type of vaccine. So what vaccines are being used by what country? I have a location, which that matches my location, or I have the ISO code. Either one is fine because they're both unique values. The country name is unique and the ISO code assigned to a country is also unique. We'll just take location just to do something different, but it really makes no difference. Okay. So that's in there. Then we have vaccinations by manufacturer. So what countries have vaccinated using which vaccine type. So we're going to pop the location on the location. And finally, we have the new cases and deaths. So here I'm going to figure out how the alphabet works, find location, pop that in there. And then finally, anyone that has a date, I'm going to connect the date. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So now we have everything connected and set up. We can now filter by a country. We can filter by dates. We can pull information from testing, cases and deaths. We can pull in the source of information for vaccines. We've got all kinds of stuff. Okay, so now our data's in there. Let's make some pretty visuals. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the report. I like to call this also the canvas. If you're a more creative type and you're artistic, we'll call it the canvas. And first thing we're gonna do is start pulling in visualizations. And maybe an easy one to start with is going to be a basic line chart. Okay. So if I have this line chart and I want to know how many tests have happened over time. So what I can do is I can put my calendar, open it up, and then I have this date field. Okay. So what I'm going to do is select the visual, the line chart visual I just added by clicking on it, take my date, and just drag it into the axis field. Very simple, very intuitive, very easy. And then what it does is it splits by year, quarter, month, or day. If you want to remove one, for example, quarter, just hit the X and it's gone. Okay. Now, we need to understand, we want to know how many tests there are. So we look at our fields. And the field that's important to us is daily change in cumulative total. This is a very, don't know why, a very fancy way of saying how many new tests have been done daily. Okay. So this is what we're interested in. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to drag it into the values. Okay. And so here we have by year, how many tests were done globally. Yearly is not necessarily a fun way to look at it. I'm curious on the daily change. So what we can do is we can click this expand, and that's going to expand the date. So we're going to right click that. So just left click it. It's going to show you by month, and then you do it again and you get by day. So you can see kind of how things have increased, and there's different waves along with the COVID waves, and it's a good way to see things. Now, I dislike this name, daily change in cumulative total by year, month, and day. So what we can do is click this paintbrush, and the paintbrush is formatting across Power BI. So we're going to click this. We're going to go to title, and we're just going to call this tests. Okay, so there's our COVID tests. And that's our first visual. So very easy, very simple. But now let's say you want to filter by a location. We're going to add another visual to our dashboard. I apologize for all the drinking. I'm a little sick right now, so hopefully I don't cough too much on this. So I'm going to apply a slicer versus a filter, okay? And I'm going to click on country data, and I'm going to bring in continent, okay? I got to just drag and drop. So now we have our different continents, okay? And we also want to go deeper, be able to go to country if we want. So what we can do is we can take location, pop it underneath, and now you can expand these to see different countries. So let's say Canada, for example. And there you go, filters for Canada. Remove it, and we're good too. Okay? So that's good. Now let's try building a table. So I'm going to take this table. Okay, and you know what? We're going to add some similar information. So let's say continent, we're going to drop in there. Great, we have our continents. Location, we're going to drop in there. We have our locations. Okay. And then population size, that's important for us. Let's put population in there, okay? Now, as you see, there's lots of digits here. And if you're like me and I have my challenges, it's hard for me to denote how big that number is. I can't, without counting the digits, and I like to add commas to help me, okay? And so what we can do is we can click on the population on the right here, and by default opens up the column tools. What we can do is just click this comma, and there you go. Now we can easily see if it's millions, thousands, or billions, or whatever. Okay, so that's just to help clarify things. And now, let's add in some additional information like testing. We just added that in, so we're going to add in the testing. Okay. And and then we're going to rename this just to be testing to make it clear. Or maybe number of tests. Okay. Blank just means that country is probably not providing that information. Okay. And again, click on it. Let's put the comma in there. Okay. Now we can do the same for cases. So new cases and even new deaths. Okay. And then again, let's put the commas in there. Okay. Now, one of the things that could be interesting is to compare the cases and deaths based on the population size. And you see here these new cases and new deaths. There's no location. This is from the OWID data. So what we can do, actually, just to help with this, in the continent, we can take this, put filters on all pages, and we're going to remove data that doesn't have any proper country assigned. So we're going to remove that. So this is helpful when you have data that's not very clean. Okay. Okay. So speaking of COVID, anyway, so I want to know cases by population. So we can do some basic math in Power BI with different formulas, very similar to Excel formulas. So if you're familiar with Excel formulas, this will be no different. What we'll do is we'll right click and put new measure. Now what I'm going to call this is cases per pop. And I'm going to put the calculate formula. This is just a good standard to use if you're going to do complicated formulas where you want to do some filtering. Okay. So now I want to divide the new cases, the sum, the sum of new cases here we go. Sum of new cases, close that, divided by the population, or the sum of the population. So country data population. Okay? And that's it. And we're actually going to copy this because we're going to use it multiple times. Okay? So we're going to press enter. And now I want to make a new one for the deaths. Okay? So delete this reference to the new cases, and we're going to put new deaths. So you can just select it by clicking on it. I have pressed tab just a little bit faster for me. And then just rename this deaths. And then enter. And then finally we'll do one for the testing. So we'll go into the testing, new measure, paste it, call this tests. And then it was called daily change in cumulative total. Okay. So now we have the, let's say, percentage values for number of cases or deaths or tests over the population. So you can see, instead of having it just general, because you can't really compare things very well, do it on a per population basis as a way to maybe generate some insight. So we're going to click back on our table here. And I'm going to put cases per pop, deaths per pop here. Okay. Now, these are just decimal values. I prefer to have these as percentages. So we're going to hit the percentage button on each just to make it a little bit clearer for us and to format it a little bit better. Okay. Now, one of the things, actually here, let me put it in. We're going to show you how to do the URL. So let's say source website. We're going to throw into the table, and here's our website. But, seeing a link like this isn't very helpful. It would be helpful if we can click on the link. So what we can do is click source website and then click on web URL in the data category. And now this makes a clickable link, but still we can make it look a little bit better. But instead of having the link, we can just put a little button. So what we can do is we can click while on the visual, click on the paintbrush again. This is where we do all our formatting. Click on values, and then click URL icon. Now we have a nice link here. Okay. Now, as I promised, we're going to make a nice, beautiful map. Okay. So we're going to click on an empty part of our canvas here, and we're going to click the map button. It appears in a pretty good location, so we're going to make that a little bit bigger here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in our location data into location. So location, continent, we have our country. And we're going to set the size to the test per population so we can see how these different regions compare to each other. I'm going to pop that in. And we have our little circles just showing how they are. And so Africa, for their population, is testing fewer people than, let's say, the other areas. The circles are relatively small right now, so what I like to do is just resize those. So I'm going to put bubbles and just crank that up a little bit. Okay. As you can see, our map is cut off a little bit here. We're running out of space in our canvas. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our canvas a little bit bigger, actually. So what we're going to do is click on an empty space, and click on the paintbrush on the right. Then click page size and create a custom size. And we're going to set this to, let's say 1600 pixels by 1600. Okay. So now we have a bit of a zoomed out view. So what we can do in the top is click on view, page view, fit to width. Okay. Now we have zoomed in view with our larger sheet. And then we have our tests. Make that a bit bigger. and then our map. Okay. But now let's say we want to see the cases and deaths as well. We can very easily select both using the control and then click them, and then control C to copy, and then control V to paste. This is just to save a bit of time. Okay. Then we're gonna do the same here. Control C, control V, bring it down. And now we're gonna go into this one, and we're going to take the cases per pop. And then this will be the new cases. So again, grab new cases, put it in values. And then here we're gonna have our deaths. So put the, sorry, that's the wrong one. Put the deaths per pop. And then put the new deaths in values. Okay, so there we have our dashboard. Pretty much all set. We also have the, we can add in a calendar filter. So click on our slicer at an empty part. That's a good location for it. And then we'll put our date. Okay. And then here we have this kind of in between. We can change this and it'll modify the dates below. If you want to modify just what type, you can do a list. I don't like the list. I do like the between. I think it's the best kind of looking filter. Okay. So now lastly, I wanted to show you guys how we can create a advanced tooltip. So let's make a new tab, and we'll make this, let's say page size, we'll do custom, make it 1250 by 600. Okay. And then what we're going to do is click on the page information here and put tooltip on. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're actually just going to take some of the information from the other tab just to help facilitate this and our view. So we're going to take this, control C, and we're going to control V it here. Okay. So I'll bring, let's say this over a little bit. And we're going to take in a map. This one we're going to make a little bit different, but here we'll grab that again. So let's say testing, paste this in here, and we're going to use this map instead. So you can see you can quickly modify maps as we go. So we're going to throw that in there. We're going to get rid of the source website because that's not going to be terribly helpful for us in a tooltip. And then so here we have, let's say, our testing by location. Then finally, we're going to grab, let's say, the tests. Okay, so then we're going to put our tests in. We'll make this a bit smaller. Say like this. And then the one thing, we're going to make an additional visual for a waterfall chart, just to see, instead of just daily change, how much do we have total. So we're going to click on this, and what we'll do is we're going to change, instead of daily, we're going to put monthly. Okay, so every month, how many tests have we done up to the total? Okay. So now what we can do is we've done our tooltip. We've got our nice, beautiful, fancy tooltip. We can click on the test pop by continent, and we can click the paintbrush, go down to tooltip, and instead of it being page auto, click on page 2, which is just the name of the tab we created our stuff. And so now what's going to happen is if you mouse over any of these, you're now going to get that test information for North America. If you decided to filter further for, or sorry, if we were to expand this and mouse over Canada, you'll get the details for Canada and so forth. So it's a quick way to get information on a given country without having to mouse over anything. Okay. And then if you want, you can repeat these tabs for cases and deaths. I'll let you do that on your own. You now have the method. And that's basically it. That's how you can get started on your very first dashboard. And so I hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions, feel free to comment or reach out to me and let me know. I'll gladly help out where I can. Thanks so much. Good luck, guys, in your Power BI adventures.